Welcome to 8 Minutes Reader Episode 1.31. This episode, I will read from Article 387 to Article 400. Article 387. Environmental Impact Assessment. 1. To minimize environmental impact and to achieve strategic objectives of natural protected areas management, development, or investment project in sustainable use zones and community zones, the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall conduct prior environmental impact assessment in collaboration with relevant ministries or institutions and subnational administration to ensure that development or investment project implemented sustainably. 2. Procedure for environmental impact assessment for development or investment projects or any activity shall comply with applicable provisions related to the environmental impact assessment process. Section 2. Management of natural resources, cultural properties, and ecotourism in natural protected areas. Chapter 1. General Provisions. Article 388. Purpose. This section shall aim to develop mechanisms and formats for managing, protecting, and conserving natural resources, including but not limited to water, land, forest, wildlife, wild plants, fishery, watershed, minerals, tourism, and cultural properties in natural protected areas. Article 389. Scope. This section shall apply to all activities of management, protection, conservation of biodiversity and natural resources, cultural properties, ecotourism, and development in natural protected areas. Chapter 2. Responsible institutions. Article 390. Responsible institutions. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources and subnational administrations shall manage, protect, and conserve biodiversity and natural resources in natural protected areas in collaboration with relevant ministries or institutions in compliance with the provision of this code and applicable laws and legal instruments. Article 391. Roles and duties. 1. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources and subnational administration shall have the roles and duties to manage, protect, and conserve biodiversity and natural resources, cultural properties, and development in natural protected areas in compliance with Section 1, Natural Protected Areas Management, in Book 4 of this Code. 2. Competent ministries or institutions shall have the roles and duties to manage natural resources outside natural protected areas and cultural properties in compliance with applicable sectoral laws and liquid instruments. 3. Relevant ministries or institutions shall collaborate and consult with the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources and subnational administration before handling, withdrawing, or commencing any activity on natural resources that may affect core zones and conservation zones of natural protected areas. Chapter 3. Watershed Management. Article 392. Watershed Management Collaboration. 1. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources, relevant ministries or institutions, subnational administrations, and stakeholders shall collaborate for sustainable watershed management to ensure sustainable natural resources management and use for the environment's best interest in economic, social, and environmental development. 2. Decisions for watershed management shall ensure consultation with relevant stakeholders. Article 393. Watershed Determination and Classification. 1. Location determination and classification of watershed shall be done with participation from relevant ministries or institutions and subnational administration responsible for managing and using watershed resources. 2. Classification of watershed shall be based on one of the following criteria. A. Physical feature and geomorphological condition. B. Slope level, attitude, land type, landform, and risks of soil erosion. C's quantity, quality, and drainage density always, seasonally, and annually. D. Quantity and quality of forest and other wild plant cover. E. Use, functions, and potential of the watershed. F. Catchment in watershed. G. Other criteria as determined in a subdecree. 3. Location determination and classification of watershed shall be determined in a subdecree upon the proposal of the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources, or subnational administrations submitting a proposal to the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources. Article 394. National Coordination Mechanism for Watershed Management. 1. A national coordination mechanism for watershed management shall be established by a subdecree to coordinate cooperation management and develop mechanisms for watershed, catchment, and river basin management activities. 2. The composition of the national coordination mechanism for watershed management shall include the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources, relevant ministries, or institutions and subnational administrations. Article 395. Subnational Coordination Mechanism for Watershed Management. 1. The National Coordination Mechanism for Watershed Management shall be determined in APRACAs by the Minister responsible for Environment and Natural Resources based on the actual situation. 2. The composition of a National Coordination Mechanism for Watershed Management shall include subnational administration, relevant provincial departments, and local communities in or near the watershed. Article 396. Watershed Management Operation. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall have the roles and duties to coordinate with ministries or institutions, subnational administrations, relevant stakeholders, and local communities to develop watershed management plans in compliance with applicable laws and legal instruments. Article 397. Strategic Plan and Action Plan. 1. The ministry responsible for environment and natural resources shall develop strategic plans and action plans for watershed management with participation from subnational administrations and relevant stakeholders. 2. Sections and types of activities concerning the use of natural resources and ecosystems permitted at each portion of the watershed shall comply with the broadcast by the minister responsible for environment and natural resources. Article 398. Monitoring, Evaluation, and Update. 1. The watershed management plan shall be monitored and evaluated regularly against indicators appropriate for each watershed. 2. A monitoring and evaluation plan shall be done with the participation of stakeholders in the watershed, and the findings from monitoring and evaluation shall be prepared appropriately and disseminated to relevant stakeholders. 3. The watershed management plan shall be updated regularly based on the monitoring and evaluation plan findings. Article 399. Watershed Depleting Activities. Watershed Depleting Activities Chapter. Conservation and Management of Cultural Properties in Natural Protected Areas. Part 1. Responsible Institutions. Article 400. Responsible Ministries or Institutions. The ministry responsible for cultural heritage, the ministry responsible for environment and natural resources, and subnational administrations shall collaborate to preserve, protect, and designate cultural heritage sites in natural protected areas and collaborate with relevant ministries or institutions in compliance with the provisions of this code, applicable laws, and legal instrument styes shall be determined by APRACAs of the minister responsible for environment and natural resources. Thank you for listening, and see you in episode 1.32.